What's going on, everybody?
Hello, family.
We are live. We're gonna wait for people to come in real quick. We didn't tell anybody we were going live.
Oh, you didn't?
I mean, no, there are a few people that knew,
Okay.
so we're just gonna wait and
Hmm.
enjoy ourselves. How are you doing, Leah?
I'm good.
This is professional content.
I-
I love this.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I'm doing great. So our first comment is comments will appear here once the broadcast starts. So we're just gonna let that ride. And now people are coming in first. Yes,
Vivian.
unknown is first.
Unknown.
Vivian, how you doing? We're doing some cross after dark content because some of y'all may not know that we live in Florida, and because we live in Florida, there are some Florida stories that happen
Yes.
that would pertain to parenting and education. And how you doing, 305 Diva?
Khadijah. Is this Khadijah Melanated, the same one you were there last Wednesday?
It could
Sandra.
be.
Naomi. Timothy. Hey, Texas. Stillness Sessions.
Got people from St.
Robert.
Louis. So good to see all of y'all in here. Let me put this all the way on my ear so I can hear myself too. So it's so good to see all of y'all. Um, how are you, Queen Cross?
Oh, I'm doing good, Queen. How you doing?
Yep. So we gonna get into the title of this video is real. It's something we were just Leah was the one that shared the story with me today, and it has so many elements that we can talk about, and we figured the aunties and uncles and the cousins would be the perfect ones to talk about the wild stuff that goes on in Florida. Like y'all, I feel like we can have a conversation about stuff like this while the kids are in bed.
Yeah, yeah.
Cause it's wild. There's people from Canada, so I'm
Oh,
curious to
cutie.
get what their thoughts are too.
Oh, yeah.
Southeast Texas,
Oh,
New Jersey.
nice, nice.
Yeah.
Mississippi. Wow. I know you would have a lot to share on this.
Yep. Somebody
Uh,
said Faith is good. She's working on a comic book. That's pretty
wow. That's
incredible. Yep.
awesome.
Yep.
I want to see
That's gonna be amazing.
New
Florida
York.
does be wild, Katie. You don't
Yeah.
even know the half of it yet. Oh my
DC.
gosh.
Yep.
It is wild. So what we're gonna
Okay.
do,
Wacky.
just to get this started, people are gonna continue to come in, and we do want to have some grown folk talk. And so we're just gonna go into it. I don't know if any of y'all heard.
Oh, sorry, honey.
Yes.
Before we started, I just wanted to send a really big thank you. There were a few other people that sent in videos last week.
Oh, that means I think that you need the Leah cam.
N-
Yeah,
What?
like I think that they need to see the
Oh
Leah
my
cam.
gosh.
If you're gonna do a personal like thank you, I think it's time. This is the Leah cam.
Well, I really do want to extend a really, really heartfelt, genuine thank you. Oh, excuse me.
Yep, yeah. Yep,
Let me get the okay.
right.
Um, there's an Indian brother. Oh my goodness. Thank you so very much. There was a London sister. Thank you. That was like such a sweet surprise. And there was a sister, an auntie, Dr. Angela. Thank you so very much. I'm so very grateful. And there was the first sister who did the video, who LaGuardia played, and I just really wanted to thank you as well. So, thank you all so much. Um, Now back to our regular program.
That's all right. Yeah, it's just I got the camera here. I might as well use it. So we're gonna go ahead and get into the story that we got as the title of this video because it is wild. So I'm gonna just add this thing in. Let me take a few other cameras off because we don't need them all at the same time. And I don't know if y'all heard anything about this, but Leah, I'm gonna let you do the honors of reading this,
Okay.
right? And let me just click this little ad here. But this is real. This is real, and this happened in Florida, and this is where we live. So here we go.
It happened where we live in the county right above us. So we're in the county right under this county, Hernando County. And so it's basically about a 15-20 minute ride into that county. So it hits pretty close to home. And from what we understand, the story is still unfolding, right? It says that guns were confiscated from the home of Hernando teacher, who she said wanted to shoot.
Yeah, Shoop. We just saying Shoop for the video. We don't know how stuff is gonna go with the words that we say, but y'all can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She wanted to shoot some students, according to a Hernando County, I think, sheriff's office report. In Spring Hill, Florida, a judge granted a risk protection order in the case of a Hernando County teacher who the school district said made some concerning comments. The Hernando County Sheriff's Office said deputies confiscated guns from her home. While the school district said Tuesday night there was no imminent threat, parents said they're furious that she hasn't been fired. According to an incident report from the sheriff's office, the teacher in question told the Fox Chapel Middle School assistant principal she was, quote, having bad thoughts and, quote, wanted to shoot some students.
Listen, when Leah first told me about this, and let me try to click the right thing. That's wild, man. That is wild.
Krista,
that is wild. Now look,
Krista
I
says
just
she wanted to click out.
listen, don't click out. Look, this is this story, like the difference with this story and a lot of the stuff that we hear, many times we're hearing stuff after the fact, right? Like we're hearing
Oh, yeah.
something horrible, devastating has happened, lives have been lost, and then we're trying to figure out stuff after. This is one of the few times where, I mean, I don't know this woman, right? Just because I live in Florida does not mean I know the people that do stuff like this, but she in the midst, she said it. Like, I don't know how the conversation started, but she's, as the teacher, is telling them I'm having bad thoughts and I want to do this to the students. Now, when we get into the explanation of why, um, I I'm gonna just
Yeah.
let y'all see, because yeah, let me just shrink back down here so y'all can see the rest of this. Um, Now, in the report, the school resource officer says the assistant principal told him a teacher made concerning comments about self-harm and shoopity dooping students. When the assistant principal visited the teacher's classroom, the teacher told her she was having bad thoughts. Later, the teacher told the guidance counselor she was upset because she learned about a social media post where people were talking negatively about her sexual orientation. And she also told the counselor she had um, those thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and 3 handguns at home, and that she wanted to shoot some students due to them not performing to their ability. Um, that's wild. And so um what somebody is saying, one of the parents were saying their heart dropped the moment they heard that it was confirmed that there were actual weapons
Mm.
inside the house, because they're sending their kids here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um the report goes on to say that the teacher made the comments about wanting to do this to students, and yes, she immediately stated she would never harm a student and stated that she doesn't want to harm herself. Um, but it's really hard to imagine how this even comes up in a conversation.
Well, there's also kind of a caveat there. A
Yes.
parent had said that anybody that makes a comment like that should not be working in a school. If a student made that comment, there would be charges pressed, the child would be expelled. And so I think there's this idea of how can, a professional or an adult make these comments, and there seems to be this slowing down of the process of the judicial process of having her charged and then thus fired. However, you know I think that the
Whoa, wait. Do you see this part, y'all? Look, the teacher was cleared to return to the classroom a few days ago. Yeah, y'all,
mm,
the teacher was cleared to return to the classroom.
hmm, hmm.
And the risk protection order expires in a year.
Iris is
Y'all,
Iris
y'all.
said her curriculum is serious. She was gonna clickety clack them.
Oh my gosh. Because they weren't performing. Look, wow.
Oh, pull that down.
Yeah,
Somebody's
yeah.
before Katie. Katie is giving the side eye. Doom of the Living says, to be honest, sometimes I can't see. I go home thinking I'm the worst piece of trash my students could ever have as their teacher. Now, not so much.
Hey, right? You
And
been
that was kind of like, honestly, I had the same reaction, knowing that no one was hurt. I had the same reaction because I get that being a teacher of middle school students, especially when you're already going through things and you're working with, I've heard this like down the line for years, that working with middle school students is difficult, like the population overall.
yeah,
So I imagine if you're already dealing with other things on a personal level and a private level, and you come in and there's just, you're working with a very difficult group of a population that's just, traditionally has always had the stereotypes of like, this is a weird time to teach in school, the middle school time. And I can imagine like it was another thing to add on to her, to what she was going through. And so I could relate to being that frustrated, and yet I could also see that this was just one piece of a bigger issue
yeah,
she is clearly suffering from. My take on this is, I feel like it's another reminder of that, of the need for us and the call for all of us to take care of each other. And yet oftentimes, because of just the state of the world, a state of, I could say, of our country, everything is so polarized, everything is so politicized,
yeah,
where you're supposed to, worship your side in a sense. Uh I use that cautiously, but there's a sense of that. Like, you're not allowed to have empathy for another side, whatever the side is, and although I see what the parent was saying when he was like, well, if this was a child, the child would have been expelled, the child would have been, charges would have been pressed, and all these kinds of things. And yet, I don't necessarily think that uh, that is necessarily the right or the most effective, helpful way for people on both sides, whether it's a child or whether it's an adult or a teacher, that are expressing very disturbing thoughts on both ends, and that the reaction is, let's fire you, let's expel you. Not to say that maybe her coming back to school a few days later is the way to go. I think that, if anything, there's this call for what protocols can there be in place in institutions where people are expressing like mental distress and are able to be given care. Because truth be told, if, from someone who has, used the mental health system throughout the state of Florida, if I were to express this, y'all, I would have been Baker acted
yeah,
for 3 days. I would
yeah,
not have been
yeah,
coming back to that classroom. I
yeah,
could tell you that
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Right. And truth be told, if it was a student and they expressed the same thing, that possibly would have been a similar thing.
I wouldn't be surprised if this happened to her.
Yeah,
Right? Like,
but they
yeah,
said a
yeah,
few days later maybe she was Baker Act. I don't know.
yeah,
Um, However, the fact that she was able to come back a few days later, I think what would be concerning to me is, what help is she getting in the long term? Like, as a parent, is she being taken care of? Does she need some time to really, obviously she is in a state of crisis, and crisis doesn't necessarily end in a few days. There's obviously a lot to unpack.
yeah,
And although I wouldn't want food to be taken from her table, I also, as a parent, am concerned about her well-being, because how how are we then assured she doesn't get overwhelmed again and this becomes an escalated problem, right? And so that's kind of where I was kind of falling. There was a spectrum of, like, I think, emotions and reactions I had. It was just this kind of like, girl, I get it kind of thing, when I first saw it. like we all have a bad day, right?
Right.
And yet when I read more into it, it was like clearly she's expressing like crisis, like I need help. And uh for it to kind of come down to where parents are like, well, she should be fired. She should be fired because, I don't feel safe with my kids being in her classroom. And at the same time there's this compassionate, I guess maybe a peer kind of like compassion of, how do I know that she's just being taken care of? And I feel like that was the main point I was getting out of the story, that there's this call that we just need to take care of each other and listen to each other. And I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be action put into place, like when things happen like this, like there's a gratitude in the processes that happen, right? um However, processes without compassion are just processes. And the thing is, we are humans. And, truth be told, just assuming that we can move through the process of, well, just give her some days off and she'll be fine. I mean, I don't know if that's, in the long haul. This is a teacher in this school, in this community, serving this community. How can we then take care of this community member who was very, in a sense, brave enough to come to really her employees and or employers, and express like, I'm having bad thoughts. I'm having trouble. And she immediately followed up like, I really don't want to hurt anyone, and I really don't want things to, anything to go wrong. But it was clear she was in a state of crisis to even let that be known. And I also don't want to devalue the fact that she was brave enough to like say it out loud. And it seems like she followed through with allowing the process of the handguns being confiscated, and then also the district and the school getting involved. And you know I just, yeah, that's kind of where I felt. um
Okay. So it and I mean, there were thoughts I had. I'm looking back at this thing now, seeing that it's a permanent risk protection order that they issued the same day, and the three handguns and ammunition were removed from the home. Because I think that was my main issue,
yeah,
right? Like honesty and being able to share, or a teacher showing that they need help and support when it's clear that there is a mental health disorder there. It's just wild to send kids to a school where, I mean, she's being honest about it, but she had three handguns. Like, that's just,
yeah,
I would never even like, we don't even want to risk that.
right,
We don't
yeah,
even
of
like
course.
that to me, if you even get to that point, and that's what's wild, because what support do you get on the other side of that? But it's just really hard to see her being a teacher,
Yeah,
right? Like, even if you remove the handguns from the home, the idea, like, what is happening in the class? And I know that she said the things that she said already don't seem like enough of a, like, the kids aren't performing to the what did she say, to the standard
yeah,
that
something about
she
their ability.
thought. And I want to, and you say that out loud, like, they're not performing, so you want to take their lives. And that's just, that's scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I it is scary.
It would be different if she was just, if it was stuff just being brought on herself, if she just felt like, man, I just feel like I can't do it and this is too hard, but I'm trying to push through. Like, if the struggle was only against her and not against the kids, I feel like it would be a different thing if she was able to step aside, take time off, be brought in. Like, you wouldn't want her to harm herself because she feels frustrated. It's just so different when it flips on the kids.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I also, and I agree with what
Yeah.
you're saying, and I relate to the scariness of the possibility of this, escalating to this other point. I think at the same time, in the present moment, um when you're in crisis, it can be turned on you or on the other person.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you are not functioning at your um typical state of mind. You are
Yeah.
not functioning from a stable perspective. And although she reached out and like verbalized that she clearly was, she was, you know, upfront to say that. And kudos to the people in, you know, in you know, the assistant principal and the resource officer, like they did due diligence and they took it seriously. And I think that all of that, you know, the process of that, of handling a situation like that, I think they did good. At the same time, knowing how the mental health system works here, there's
Yeah.
still a lot of pitfalls where it can, there's a lot of not enough care and compassion and understanding of how mental illness can unravel a person, to where what she may be presenting as in that moment, in the crisis moment, you can be completely, you know, 180 from who you typically would be in crisis. You are not yourself. And so although I think that um yes, it's scary, and I think that, you know, she should not be with kids and things like that at this time. I think coming back to the classroom after a few days
That's not even.
is
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
necessarily
Yeah.
comforting. And I, you know, I can even understand and relate to, you know, the higher ups trying to like give her a chance to kind of come back and, you know, and you know, still keep a job even though she was asking for help. At the same time, you know, mental illness doesn't necessarily snap, just, you know, you don't just even flip the other way either. You may be more a little bit, a little, you may be more stable after a few days. um However, it's clear there are things that she is needing to address, that um that being in a school environment as a teacher with those responsibilities, with that, within that kind of social environment, is more triggering than helpful for her. And I
Yeah.
think it's a lot when you're already, you know, expressing that you're basically you're in a state of like being overwhelmed, right?
Right.
And I don't think that a teaching environment is necessarily the most healthy thing to be in when you've already just expressed crisis and you've only had a few days of stabilization.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I wish there was maybe some kind of what is it, you know how you get a like a, not workers comp, but something like that, where, you know, you're not fired, but you're just placed on a leave
Yeah.
for, you know, however long. um and that there should be a process within that where you can then, there's a process in which the, she is able to engage in a active healing process of getting through to what she needs to, what she's going through.
Right.
And then, you know, even if it's like you may not be a teacher, but maybe it comes down to like helping you get another job that's a little less triggering. And because I do get that work or being active can help the process of like coming back to stabilization as well. I just don't think that in a school environment that's the thing to do, or any social environment. It often is more triggering than helpful in those times. That's,
And I think what's
oh, the
rough.
family medical leave, Jaquai. Yes,
Yeah.
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 Thank you.
Yeah. What do you know about the Family Medical Leave Act?
I don't know. What do you know about it, Jaquai?
We gonna start at some point. We gonna start doing stuff where we pull y'all into the conversation and have
Yeah,
you on screen. Like we're gonna start sending out some invites at times. And Ashonda,
a
thank you so
furlough.
much.
Oh,
Thank you
thank you,
so much.
Ashonda. Yes, thank
Yes.
you so much. Yeah, a sabbatical. That's yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. That's
It's just in
great.
general what somebody else said too. Like there's not support like that for teachers, let alone people.
Yeah,
Right? Like it's hard enough to get quality care when it comes to things like that.
yeah,
So I could see how regardless of what you're dealing with, mental health or otherwise, you still need a job.
yeah,
And she could
yeah.
very much still be like, I love to work with kids. This is the like, I don't know what it is for the other parts of her life.
Right,
and
right.
and so you're right in what you were saying, in the sense of like, pulling somebody's job away is not going to be the answer, but help, man. Where does the help come from when you're in a public school as a teacher? The pay you get is limited already, and then here is a crisis, and somehow this got to the news,
Yeah, well,
right?
yeah.
And well, it makes sense that it got to the news, because anything that threatens the kids
Mhm.
is going to get there. But support for that in Florida is rough,
Yeah.
and I know it's rough anywhere.
Thank you, Alexis. Yeah. Oh, so Joni says FMLA, which is the Family Medical Leave Act, gives workers the freedom.
And I'm gonna go
Uh-oh.
right back so we can see her.
Gives
Yep.
workers
I'm
the
gonna put it up so all of y'all can see.
gives workers the freedom to take time off work for medical reasons without the fear of losing their job.
Okay, I like
Which
that.
I
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's an important point, because that can also be a trigger too when you're in crisis, and it's like, so I'm losing my bread, and I'm suffering in some way, and now
yeah,
I can't even pay my bills. That doesn't necessarily help people um heal. If anything, it's a trigger for more stress. And so yeah, I think something like that hopefully is I don't know how it works in Hernando County. I know our parents worked in Dade County,
yeah, yeah.
and there were just different things that were available, but I also don't know in the mental health realm at that time what it was like. So yeah.
No, now this is somebody gotta. I'm reading comments because there's still jokes in the midst of this. Uh, yeah, maybe once teachers start threatening the kids like this, the kids will stop bringing guns. Like, if you're afraid of your teacher, you probably wouldn't.
Oh
But
my
but
goodness.
yeah, no, like I am with the thing of like, if you do get frustrated to the point where you
Yeah.
want to pull out
Yeah,
a
yeah.
weapon on kids,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's a, I don't know what other sign,
Right,
right?
right. I
Like
don't want
that's
to
a clear sign. Yeah,
exactly. I'm not trying to at all coddle the idea of, oh, she could surely just come back and do that, this kind
right.
of work. I don't want to like promote that necessarily at this moment in time
Yeah,
when it's clear that she's still reeling from something. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And I mean, to be honest, as a parent, if it were our girls there, no, no,
Yeah, I know,
yeah,
right?
I
Yeah,
would
as
I would
sensitive
even
as we
take
could
the
be.
girls out if,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Like, nobody wants somebody processing violent thoughts like that on their kids,
yeah, absolutely,
right? Like, I
absolutely,
wouldn't be there like, well, as long as she's good. We know if it was our kids, it could be 5 years after,
yeah,
right? It would still be like, oh, you mean the teacher that
yeah,
wanted to do this to my child because they weren't me? It's like, you wouldn't ever want them around your child.
yeah,
And I think that's just, it is such an extreme, it's such an extreme case, because you want people to get help.
mm-hmm,
You want them to get support. You don't want people to be out of a job. But when your kids' lives are at risk, that's like my kid's life over anybody.
yeah,
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 yeah. That's just rough. It's just sad because you still need the support there. Yeah,
mm-hmm,
and
yeah,
there's so many little intricate elements in this story, because could we get into a whole discussion of gun violence and all of that? We could get into that. We could get into healthcare. There's just so many levels of it, but we're just glad to be able to discuss it with y'all, right?
yeah.
There's things I'm
Ingrid,
learning from y'all.
yeah, I think Ingrid was saying like she'd be honest, she would take the schools. I'm sorry, she would take her kids out.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that like you were saying, that this lends itself to the bigger issue that there's overall in our society, and I think especially if people of color, we can relate to this and have been, kind of at the forefront of receiving this lack or seeing this lack, even that a lot of the institutions that are in place and that have been in place and that have even been founded are lacking very much of basic human compassion. And I think that it is just kind of built up over time, if anything, and sometimes become more covert in a way, in terms of the the grand deficit of not being able to truly see people, and not even to really meet people where they're at, especially when it comes to social services, things like that, like, schools and all of that. There's so many countless stories that we hear from students as well, where they are not taken care of when they express any kind of, you know, um, uh, issue that they're going on with, and I'm sure people who work in social work and work in the foster care system, and then just work in, especially like inner city areas, where there's so many kids that fall through the cracks of just not getting their basic um, needs met within the education system, within the healthcare system. And then it goes down the line. It's of women of color, it's men of color, it's
Right.
even our judicial system, the prison system, how it just, the prison system itself is not even necessarily the space where you are rehabilitated. You are just put there, And so I think that this situation, um I mean, I'm grateful no one it didn't get to where it could have been. I think that that needs to be said,
Of
because
course.
we
Of
were
course.
already
Yeah.
reeling from a lot of things that have escalated to the point of no return,
Right.
and now um we have babies, and we have people who are no longer here with us, and that a life taken is a life taken. It doesn't
Yeah.
even matter the situation, right? And I
Right.
think we can all agree with that. And so the deficit that a lot of the systems, and then thus us as individuals, or as a collective, there's a deficit in being able to meet people where they're at, and being able to create solutions that see people where they're at, and without the knee jerk reaction to ostracize and even demonize folks when they're in clear pain and crisis. And also being able to have systems adjust to that, that when you are in crisis, okay, we take you out from this environment that could potentially be, an explosive one in a sense, and get you help, elsewhere, on the side, and while also maintaining the safety of, our babies, right? And also the other teachers that are there, the other personnel that are there working hard, and all that kind of stuff, right? So in a sense, I feel like no one should really be suffering on any side of the
Right.
of the of this of any kind of dilemma like this, on a social, like, collective level. Yeah.
Yes. So there's two questions. Angela wants to know, have we ever had issues with the girls' teachers? Yes.
Yeah.
And are we nervous about sending our girls to school every day? Um, I would say I'm not. Like I'm not nervous. There's things to be nervous about all the time.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the issues with teachers, I can tell you it's nothing like this.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing like that. No violent kind of outburst thing. It just comes into a thing of like, our kid are teachers able to see the needs of your kids? Are they able to, that's a whole conversation,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
we've had a lot of talks about that. When it comes to nerves, like just in the dangers and the things that are out there, like I don't personally try to dwell in a scary space.
Yeah.
Like I'm afraid. I don't really want to be like that, but we try to instill in them everything that we can at home and try to make it open for them to come home and talk to us about what goes on.
Yeah.
That's the that sounds like a political response, right? Right. That sounds like very formulated, but there's a lot of layers under that we could go on about for hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I try to my way of I think keeping my space, my head space and my heart space positive, even for the girls, is I pray for them every day, and they see me when they go out to when they're going out to school.
Yeah. When I drop them off,
When
we
you
see
do,
they'll be like,
yeah.
what is mommy doing?
Yeah.
Mommy's praying.
And
Yeah.
and then, and I'll pray for their school, I pray for their teachers, I pray for the other students. And And I also, and so like, yeah, we have had issues with their teachers. And yet they are still so very young. House of Courage, yeah, homeschool.
We've talked about
Hey,
it. We have talked
I
about
am
it.
a
We've talked about
full
it.
big supporter of that.
Yeah.
I really am. And and so at this time, that's not what's on the table for us right now to follow through with. But I do have a big admiration of those who do homeschool or homeschool groups and things like that. I love that. Um,
Really quick, I don't know if y'all know, but both of my parents were teachers. Her mom was a teacher.
yeah.
So like the education stuff has been around us. It did not help my grades. My personal grades didn't matter, but my parents were. Yeah.
Yeah, I now it's funny he says that because they are actually the best examples of teachers that I've like known.
Your
I've
your
had,
your mom too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
our the three of them,
Yeah.
his mom, his dad, and then my mom, all in the system in Miami for like over 30 years, all of them. So it's like 90 years worth of teaching experience they have. And they my mom will even implement some of the things for the girls like very early on, and then his mom is really proactive of helping Nayeli. She helped Nayeli and Amala with reading,
Yes.
and she
And
still
hey, ain't
does.
that the truth?
Yeah.
Teaching kids are like
Yeah,
pastors' kids. Yep,
yeah.
the worst ones, right? Yep,
See,
yep.
I was a good student because I was terrified of my
Listen,
mom.
I was terrified too, but it didn't do nothing when I
This
went
is
to
true.
school. Yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah.
yeah,
So even when I used to work with my mom, I was her para at one point, and I would work with her and watch her mostly. It was so funny because if there was one point I kind of had to like get it in my mind, like, wait a minute, just you are not at home, so don't react the way you would as her child, right? So an example of this, of like how, how my mom, was in the classroom. My mom was like, just serious business, right? But fair, encouraging. She was, that one where you could put the most difficult child in her class and they would come out straight, right? Like they got A's, they
yeah,
know what they're
yeah,
supposed to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
They're speaking, respectfully.
I
Like,
thought you about to say multiple languages and
no,
jump,
no.
but yeah,
Like
yeah,
even their parents would be like, "How did you do it?"
yeah.
And his mom is like that, and then
They would
his
send the
dad.
bad kids to my
Yeah,
mom.
and there was
Yeah,
same thing with my mom, and then even his dad was just really great and like really just nurturing the kids,
right,
encouraging them, and
right.
then that like allowed them to kind of believe in themselves because he was working in middle schools.
He would have the kids like looking for him later in life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was the kind
yeah,
of teacher he was. So like in the class when I was her para, um she would get, if some of the kids were getting out of term, I would sometimes try to like warn them, like, okay, now see, she done said it one time.
it's like
If
you
she
really
come
don't want.
back another
Yeah,
time, it's not gonna be pretty. And they just like, oh, whatever. And they're still getting loud. My mom would just like, she would just like lay the hammer down out. And at one point I was like, oh, and I like ducked
oh
down and I
my
was like, oh wait,
gosh.
okay, she's not talking to me.
Yeah,
And I was
yeah,
like, I told y'all.
yeah.
And but my mom was very much like, there's not a problem with being stern because if you do it in a way, if anything, you're trying to show kids you're not going to do anything because you're better than just doing any old thing, right? And for her, it was like, I don't care if you are in first grade or in 10th grade, like you can be accountable to be your best self. At least that's
Right.
what she would try to do. And so there was that element that I even grew up with. I had this teacher, Miss Doris Love, who was also my Girl Scout teacher. And she was that at the time we still had paddling in school. And she would have all the like the boys who were just going wild. And you would never tell in her class. Like everybody was like in line, straight, talking properly, like respectful. She had us doing all kinds of interesting things. And it was just that kind of persona that I think me and LaGuardia, and I think a lot of even millennial, that generation we've come from or that we're familiar with, that is kind of missing
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
schools now. And it's not that I don't want, I'm not trying to say like beat my kids and all that. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not saying like talk to them any kind of way. But I miss the teachers who, and I'm not saying they're all gone, but I have found them very hard to find, that are able to kind of see what we see and help, if anything, assist us bring out the best in them as a student.
Right.
And that is where some of the issues have arisen, because now it's a very clear, swift process for them to like label and box the children, and so if
Right.
they don't follow this rubric, it's like, well, you should consider they may have to repeat the grade, or they're going to have to be put in this other kind of class, or they're going, and sometimes you're not even told, it'll just be, this is where your kid is, this is where she is now. And it's like, wait a minute, like,
Right.
where's the conversation piece or the warning of like, this is what's going on, and I'm not saying that's happening all the time, but
But it
I've
just seems
noticed.
like there's that little fear. Like rather
Yeah.
than mess with your child or try to do too much to try to get involved, we'll just place them over here.
Right. And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
although there's more communication and things like that, I can say that it's been a blessing that even some of the teachers where I've known the girls to have some issues with, we've been able to communicate, um, and keep a relatively good demeanor within each other, to kind of make sure that essentially our the child is what's important. The only reason we are connecting is because we have our child in common. And I do believe, as a parent, when I send our girls to school, I am entrusting them, because they're, first of all, they're there for 6 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And I can't help but feel the desire or the need to have a working relationship with their teachers,
Right.
because in essence, I'm allowing you to care for my kid, or I'm allowing you to educate them. And educate them is often coupled with also the social element, right? And so, yeah, all of that to say that there's just this, it's, I think I'm just trying to make the bigger point, of not only that, but of what is this story is about, is that there's a need for community.
Yeah.
There's a need to see each other and to care for each other, and because truth be told, it is a blessing to be able to have this a sense of security when you're able to send your child somewhere and know that they're being taken care of, they're being looked after, they're being considered, there's compassion that's being tried to be bestowed upon them. And yet that is also something becoming very hard, to find in a lot of classrooms, and thus a lot of people. Yeah.
Yes. And
Khadijah.
shout out to Khadijah. Thank you so much. And we are
Oh,
so sorry that you lost your step cousin, but thank you
yeah.
so much for joining us and giving us love.
Thank you,
That means
Khadijah.
a whole lot.
Thank you. Our condolences. I'm so sorry.
Um, do you feel that many teachers don't have the passion for the profession anymore? And yeah. And I know they're saying also many of them may be triggered due to personal, emotional, and mental issues, as you were discussing. I cannot say because I really don't know,
Yeah.
like overall, who has the passion and who does not. There are, for every negative experience, there's great experiences and
Yeah.
there's exceptions. And throughout the history of teachers, from when I was a kid to my parents ran into the same things. There's the teachers that kind of, they're there, they're not as engaged, they don't have control of the classroom. And then there's ones that are incredibly passionate and make
Yeah.
things fun. But that's, being a teacher is not an easy job.
Right.
Like it's
Yeah.
enough to have two kids as a, like, compared to having a whole classroom and
Yeah.
having the responsibility to teach different personalities all in one place without knowing the history they're bringing with them.
Yeah.
Because I mean, kids are still bringing baggage from home into your class, and they're not all there by choice. They didn't
Mm.
come there like, yeah, I heard about this class, I would love to be here.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you got to figure out and do that while you're trying to figure out yourself and what year of being a teacher are you in. Many teachers will come in excited in the beginning,
Mhm.
and then some, like that little air thing, like you'll be popped like a balloon, or like that slow little air will
Yeah.
release over time. Your mindset might change, but that's not everybody. So I don't know what it is overall, but I know there's passionate teachers there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you'll find that in any space, right? I just I'm so
What?
sorry. Author Joan was like, these old school teachers didn't play the radio, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah. But parents today won't allow teachers to guide and get students in line anymore. Firm but fair teachers in order to educate students is now not allowed. Yeah. These kids today are mostly entitled, spoiled without any accountability, and it's the parents' fault. I
That describes a certain situation,
I
right?
do.
Like
I
those
have to
things
say,
can happen.
Joan,
It
yeah.
Yeah, it's not all the time, because what'll happen now is teachers, it's hard to in our opinion, you can't let a teacher just guide on their own.
Mhm.
You would love to, the same way you would love to let a doctor guide you, or anybody on the outside guide you. But as a parent, you have to be involved,
Yeah.
right? We don't live in the era of, or in the era of just let the professionals do it, because a teacher don't have to love your kids. A
Mm.
teacher don't have to know why your kid behaves a certain way, or what their like struggle is. They don't have to do that, because at the end of the day they have a job to perform and other kids to look after at the same time. So you have to be involved, we have to be involved, we have to be the ones keeping them in check and being firm and doing all of that stuff at home, so when they go to school they can take that with them.
Yeah.
um but yeah, I did listen. I had the old school, super strict teacher when I was in elementary school that did get me right.
Yeah.
And my parents were right there, like, yeah, get them right, because we gonna get them right at home too.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they came into the school and had me switch to the strictest teacher they could find.
Mhm.
Um, and for me, that's what I needed, right? But
Right.
there are the parents that, yeah, have kind of brought us to the point to where teachers can hardly do anything
Right.
in
And
certain situations. Yeah.
yeah, I think the nuances are becoming more intense at this point of time, and when it comes to education, you're contending with discrimination, and you're contending with people's baggage, as teachers, as parents, as students. You're contending more with things that are going online. Social media has more of an effect now on education, on students' psyche than ever before. There wasn't so much competition in the same way, I think, just in our generation.
Right.
But I obviously there were nuances to that, because depending on where you were and where you lived, the nuances could change, they could vary. And so I think that it's really hard to just you know make a blanket statement over, it's this side's fault or that side, it's the teacher, it's the parents, it's the kids. I think it's a collective issue. I think that kids are um you know in a sense more vocal about what it is that they need, or things like that, a little bit more than before, and their voices are being taken a bit more. I don't know. They're able to have more seats at the table than like maybe our generation before, right?
Yeah.
And in a way, that's a great thing, because you're seeing more kid entrepreneurs. You're seeing kids doing incredible things in terms of being able to be given the baton early to guide themselves, to make choices themselves, I should say, right? And then there's a certain kind of like general softening in terms of discipline and how it's used in the schools, um, that that can make it, on one hand, difficult for teachers to have some leverage, and to also kind of like curb a behavior, or even curb a mindset. Um, I also think that there's a sense of entitlement that teachers can have too, because as a result of that, I don't want to say a result, but what I see correlated with that is there's more um leeway that allows teachers to kind of um I don't know, uh perhaps navigate where kids are, how their education is gone. So like when I was telling you, um they can sometimes just put the kids in, a different kind of class, or do things like that without maybe a lot of communication with the parents. That's things like that, would have been a little bit more of a triggering thing for parents to kind of come in like, why are you doing this? And I don't know about that. And all these changes are happening, and yet I'm only hearing it from my child, right? And I also think that parents too play a part in that. How we come at, how we are uh viewing and perceiving the education system. And I think a lot of us having so many instances where it has failed us, and where a lot of us have fallen through the cracks, for various reasons. And there's a sense of like, I must protect the child, I must protect my child at any cost. I need to come in, and sometimes it's like, given the situation, there's a sense of like, I will come out with the with the armor on, ready to go to war,
Yeah.
when maybe there can be a bit more of leeway on both ends of like, okay, essentially what's most important, do we need to be right, or do we want to come to a solution, right? And so uh I'm thinking about restorative justice in a sense, like some of the elements of that, where it's like, th- indeed there are wrongs on to be placed on everyone, but uh I don't think that demonizing and polarizing each other is going to be the way to really find solutions to caring and educating our students in the most efficient and most compassionate way, to make them the well-rounded human beings essentially that they're going to be, and thus the leaders and the caretakers of our society, right?
Right.
Like at the end of the day, what I'm most concerned about is, yes, I want the girls to be educated, I want them to have access to learn all kinds of things. But for me, it's also fundamentally, those are simply to guide them to help build who they are as people. Because obviously we see, I've been through the education system. I've been like a straight A student and all these different things. And I promise you, there are a lot of things that I do not know fundamentally, that I have had to teach myself, and there are other things that I missed that, didn't necessarily, the promise didn't necessarily stick. And honestly, maybe that wasn't even all on them. Like LaGuardia was saying, they're not necessarily paid to raise us,
Right.
and yet there's fundamental things that you go through 18 years of just primary, or like from elementary to high school, and a lot of us have come out like, man, I still don't know how to like balance my checkbook, or I don't know about, APR and mortgage, and even job and saving and all this other stuff. And then we're definitely lacking in terms of like character building. I mean, there's a lot of programs out there, right? But then that's a whole element of learning that we are not necessarily given either. So I just think that obviously there are pitfalls that we are all bringing to this table when it comes to educating our kids. And I think there's a need to revisit, what does it mean to have an educated child who is then going to become an educated adult, and then what role can we play that allows us to kind of put the armor down from teacher, from the administration, school side, and then also as us, from as parents. I think that trying to solve a problem with our weapons drawn, or our arms up, is not really going to be the way to truly solve not only the education system, uh issues along with any other system, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. And so I'm getting little pieces of what people are saying in between. A great point that a few have said is I mean, sometimes the parents are worse than the kids. I won't say sometimes, many times,
Mm,
right? Because that's where a lot of the issues can come from. It's just it's baggage. It's the baggage. It's the experiences. It's things that happen at
yeah.
home. One was saying that a child had brought a gun to school, and then come to find out, like their parents are fighting constantly all the time. So you're dealing with that same energy at home, and you
Yeah.
bring that to school. And a teacher, what in the world? Like, how do you deal with that? You're just there, like, well, I got the curriculum.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I planned this. I didn't know I was gonna have to deal with that, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So everything, it starts at home, it goes to school. You have to be connected with the school, but the same thing goes for a teacher. Their
Mhm.
stuff, what they bring into the class, is what comes from their home.
Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
kid is what comes from their home. And then when we step in there, it's what's come. Everybody brings their baggage everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all
Yeah.
often need the same things. We all need love, understanding, compassion, for somebody to listen to us, be able to see us, but we have to give the same thing too. And we all have so much to work through. And I mean, it definitely ain't, to me, it's not the kid's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Angela had asked a question, but I wanted to know what I didn't get to read the whole thing. She asked, "Do you see any local politicians who are trying to implement solutions to what appears to be a growing problem in the schools, specifically possible violence in our county?" Um, I can't say yes, and I can't say no because honestly, this is on my end that I do not participate in local town hall or just district
right.
uh, meetings about what's going on, like what solutions are being offered or being suggested or put on the table as possible solutions. So I don't know, and I haven't even heard anything around like other parents who are more in touch with the county. Um, but I also now recognize the parents that I'm in touch with are of a certain, I don't know, it's like a certain demographic. And if anything, there seems to just be problems along that and along those lines. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know. That's a great question, Angela. And I think it gives some conviction. And I've talked to LaGuardia about this before, that at one point I wanted to be more involved with like district meetings and things like that, to just know, like just to be a bit more involved. And I recognize that local politics often has a very direct effect on us, and that of course, like the federal government and all that kind of stuff, it trickles down. But when it comes to like actual policies that, can be like, we can feel very immediately or more immediately, I know it happens a lot at the local level. And
I think the best example that we saw when we lived in South Florida was
yeah,
excuse me, the restorative justice work,
yeah, there was
right?
when we were,
Even if you were to
yeah,
explain that, that was conflict resolution at its finest.
yeah.
Like, that kept kids from having to go through the prison system at all. Like, it kept things where, I'll let you explain.
Well, no, you did it
Yeah, yeah,
great. Like that's a great summary of it. There was this organization, Power You. At the time, me and LaGuardia were still doing like just social justice work in Miami and kind of branching out into the rest of Florida. And there was this group called Power You, and they were based in I want to say it's Overtown, but they had heard of this concept called restorative justice. And I believe that it was first implemented, I want to say Michigan. But they had implemented as a experimental way to resolve issues in one of these schools in Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember everything so much now. And they were noticing that in the school in previous years, there was a high rate of violence. So it was like a lot of fighting, and a lot of kids getting arrested and put into jail. And then, as we know, once you are
In
enter
the
the
system.
system,
Yep.
it
Yep.
follows you. It follows.
Yep.
It's on your record. It was a high school, and so they had implemented this. And the idea is that the one who the aggressor, and then the one who the aggressor was targeting, they come into this circle with peers, and I think the adults are kind of on the outside, and they allow uh them to kind of have these conversations of like, why, the idea is like to have accountability, and take responsibility, and to kind of like come up with uh possible solutions on what can be done for the aggressor to, kind of change their behavior, and then also to empower the one who was targeted. And there were showing signs that when they were doing that more often as the main way to rehabilitate the issue or amend the issue, there were less instances of like school violence within the school, this particular school, and there was less arrests that were happening.
Right.
And so, Power U was like wanting to use that because Dade County, was like increasing in the incidences of school violence, and it was very common for you to just immediately be arrested. And so they were trying to think of something that could work, and they wanted to try this, and they went to the school board, and they were trying it out in their schools and things like that, and they were really trying to get it to be something that was um implemented as a another option for handling some of those situations. And the school board we had an event that night, and some of the kids came, and like their one of the community organizers who was working on it, they had came back from the school board meeting. And and I was like, so like what happened, like, so y'all going do this thing? And they were like, they just had these solemn faces, like, no, like they, the community organizer, she was like, first of all, they were so rude to the kids. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she was just like, and they just chimed in. They were like, they were so mean. They didn't want to hear what we had to say. We're
Mm.
trying to like get our thoughts out. We prepared, and they kept
I
saying,
remember.
go
Yeah.
sit down, and
Yeah.
nobody want to hear what you got to say, and it was just like real disrespectful. And so, it was like, but this is a good idea, because it was something that they were kind of going around the county, and giving talks on and things like that. And it was something they wanted to try. It hadn't been done in Miami before, and it was still kind of new at the time. So there were it was a mixed bag, where I think some schools were trying it and it worked, and then some were, and the results were kind of like inconclusive in a way, and they still thought it was overall a better solution, a better option, instead of, because at the same time they were trying to also create options to decrease the school to prison pipeline.
Right. Right.
And so it was like a kind of a twofer, that they were two things they were trying to address at the same time. And it really kind of put a sour taste in our mouth of like, man, so when you go to the school board and you try to understand things, or you try to like, maybe offer new things, like you just get shut down, like you were just disrespected. And then, years later we're up here, and I was like wanting to do that, even though I had known that situation. But then I think it was around the time of like the CRT thing was like such a big trigger thing. a topic here, and there was these videos of like parents just,
Going
like going
wild.
wild,
Yeah,
like they're just
yeah.
like yelling over each other, and they're duh, duh, duh. And I was like, I can't listen to nothing like that. There's no space for me. Like obviously everybody in the town hall done made up their mind.
Hmm.
And I don't necessarily have the unction in me to like go and deal with all of that, to be
Cause
honest
we
with
really,
you.
cause to be real, and I mean shout out and yes, I do know really quick the Miami Music Project. I
Oh
did hear
yeah.
about that. There
Yeah.
are great programs going on like that. So that I think is a wonderful
Oh
thing.
wow. Her son
Yeah,
is a professional cellist.
that's awesome.
That's
That's
awesome,
awesome to me.
Ashonda. Yeah.
Now what I would say, like yeah, like getting involved in the community is like I think it is a great thing to do to get involved even with the board stuff. It's just hard.
Yeah.
It's just hard, and not even to make an excuse when it comes to us and when it comes to many people. I think the thing, the place that you're trying to start with to stand up and make sure things are done fairly and right is in your own house,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like first is kind of within yourself, right? So
Yeah.
when it comes to the mental health journey, it is like, well, how do I respect myself, love myself, care about myself? And then in this family, how do we make sure, like, just you're building from there, then you step outside the house and start to think like, man, what can I do here and here and here? Because when it comes to violence, you're dealing with so many individual homes all in one place.
Mm,
But
mm.
there's great programs out there that I think, I mean, are incredible, because a lot of people do feel lost and don't have a solution. And I think it's beautiful when people can come together and fight for those things.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. And I like what Ashonda like put in as another option, that
yeah,
music, I think even certain there's a like meditation, in terms of just the idea of being quiet, of the idea of taking a step back, moments of silence, of just to just be quiet, and our like learning that as a tool. um all of those things I'm going to always be like excited and in favor of, because just like any kind of transformation, all of it truly is the best, is best practiced and learned like within us first, right?
yeah, yeah,
And I think that mental illness, and even the focus that's on it now, has potentially great implications of being almost a blueprint of sorts, or maybe a part of the roadmap of improving or resolving a lot of the issues that we have in our society, in this society. I can't speak for a lot of other ones because I don't live there, right? I'm here. And also, specifically, I'm in Florida, so I get that our issues are always going to be nuanced. And yet, just as nuanced as all of those issues could be, so are human beings, so are individuals. So for myself, I recognize me having mental illness has an impact on my husband and my girls, and then it has an impact on my family at large, and then also how I show up in the world and all of that, right? There's a ripple effect. Um Along with anyone with any other condition that they're working through, whether it be physical illness, whether it be trauma, abuse, PTSD, any of those things, right? There's all of those things, that baggage that we carry that hasn't been worked through, that doesn't have a place to go. um Essentially, how we learn and how we work through our own baggage, I think, gives inspiration on how we can then uh care and resolve some of the other baggages around us on the outside, like as above so below, as out so in, or you know what I mean? Like, what happens in here is going to be a reflection on how we live on out here, right? If I'm coming to you, my way of dealing with things is to yell at you and to call you all kind of names, out your name, be disrespectful, borderline want to like beat you up, and all this kind of, I want to boof you and all this other stuff. obviously, that is, I can say that's not healthy, but that's giving you a clear example of that's how I'm also treating myself. And then you not knowing me and you see my family, you're going to have an idea, oh, so that's what they doing at home. Like she just be out here just while and not seeing anything of her thing. It's just all rage, right? And that is going to be implemented in all the systems with the people in the systems upholding it, creating it, and then benefiting from it, or having to partake in it. All of that is reflected on how we are handling and moving through our own stuff. If we don't know how to carry and deal with our own energy and our own past and trauma and things like that, it is very much going to be reflective on how we show up in the world, in all the roles that we play. It's going to show up on how I am as a wife, how I am as a mommy, how I am as, a teacher, how I am as your friend, all of that stuff. And so I think that that is often very is not even allowed a space in these issues when it comes to like social issues, because I don't want to just make it about politics. And yet these social issues, like, I forget what her name is, she was like, the personal is often political. But what needs to happen first is the personal, right? The personal work of like moving through stuff, having community, building community. Who are we when we show up as a community member? Can I be reliable? And can I be reliable to see you and hear you and help you through a thing? And I think like those elements that were there, in back in the day, or in spaces now here and there, we still need that can't be understated, and it can't be ignored. If anything, now compassion and empathy, love, self-love, love for others, love for our environment, love for our collective, all of that is the glue to that makes all these other things dynamic. That is what helps the systems flow efficiently, effectively, and compassionately. And so I think like that is so missed, that the glue, right? It's that salve that I feel like is often just completely ignored or completely downplayed. And yet when I see instances of that, like for the Miami Music Project, of, implementing music as a way to kind of like handle the baggage, right? It gives us a place to put our energy in. And now, Ashanda's son is a professional cellist. And you have kids who are able, like with instances of restorative justice, when it's worked, you have kids that were able to basically stand up to face a fear by someone who was, coming at them, did some kind of wrong to them, and they're able to make the brave, uh, step of like, you did this and this hurt me, and someone seeing on the other end, seeing that when I do this, I hurt people. This is not okay. And them being able to have the wherewithal to make the changes themselves. And so I imagine when Ashanda's son were, and if he wanted to, were to come into spaces where there were other kids like him, or other kids who were, having some trouble, that he is now in knowing how to work with his own self, and he's found an outlet of where to put his baggage in, and it's now this beautiful thing. He is able to now share that with other people, the ripple effect.
Very good, Leah.
Thank you.
Very good. I think that we could end on that note. We done been with you, and look. You see that there? They tell you,
Oh,
preach, Leah, right?
thank you.
So thank you all so much for spending this evening with us. We are going to have so many more conversations like this. We can continue to talk to y'all and get into things like this. So the conversation is not done.
Oh
Like
yeah.
this is incredible. We love y'all. And anything else you would like to say?
Listen, thank you all so much for taking this ride. I was like so nervous. I'm still like, I have like, I'm damp from, I had a hot flash and everything. I really want to appreciate you
She
all.
said she really wants to
No,
preach.
no, no.
All right.
I really appreciate you all for taking this ride with us. And you all, like, I've been like staring at your comments a lot because although that was like a very heavy space to kind of navigate, um I am very thankful that you all are willing to kind of see and have the discussion in a sense, in a very stable, peaceful manner, because that's really all it is about, right? Like, it's nothing about trying to like drag her down, or
Of course. Yeah.
it's not about making things more polarized, or and none of that. Like, that is not the thing. That's just not what we're here for. And I know you all aren't for it, because I'm like, you all got things to do, you got babies to take care of, you got food to put on the table, things, and other interests and things like that. And so I'm always like cognizant of wanting to make sure that the time we share together is worth it to you all. And I appreciate you all and the discussion and the feedback and the points that were made. And I just, thank you all. You aunties are amazing. You uncles are amazing. And I just really, really, I'm always grateful for the time that we get to share together. So thank you all.
Thank you. So we will be seeing y'all soon. Anybody that missed it or came late, just keep watching this over and over again. Right. And we will send love to the girls who are in bed now.
Yeah.
And yeah, we will see y'all soon.
Yeah.
Much love to the cousins too. The
Oh,
aunties, the uncles,
yes. And
and
the
the
cousins.
cousins.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Oh, Bella. Oh, it's time to go to bed.
Yep. She up
2:38
here
a.m.
late, man. Over here, it's only 9:30,
Yeah.
9:39.
Yeah. Yeah.
But much respect to all of y'all. See y'all soon.
Yes. Thank you all. Great weekend, you all.
All right.